Pericles was a famous Greek leader and general during the Golden Age of Athens. He became one of the most important figures in Athenian politics between the Persian and Peloponnesian Wars. The historian Thucydides called him the first citizen of Athens. Under his rule, the Delian League turned into an Athenian empire, and he led the city during the early years of the Peloponnesian War. The time of his leadership is often called the Age of Pericles. During this period, Athens reached its peak in culture, politics, and art. Pericles supported art, architecture, and learning, helping Athens become the main cultural center of the Greek world. He began a great building program that included the Parthenon and other famous structures on the Acropolis. These projects made the city more beautiful, showed its strength, and created work for many citizens. He also strengthened democracy, although some critics said he acted like a populist. Pericles came from a rich and noble family. His mother was from the powerful Alcmaeonid family. He and several of his relatives died in the Plague of Athens, which weakened the city during its long war with Sparta. Pericles was born in Athens. His father, Xanthippus, was a politician who led Athenians to victory at Mycale, and his mother, Agarista, came from a family connected to the reformer Cleisthenes. As a young man, Pericles was quiet and preferred studying to socializing. Ancient writers said that before his birth, his mother dreamed she gave birth to a lion, which was seen as a sign of greatness. People later joked about the shape of his head, calling him Squillhead, but the helmet he wore in portraits simply showed his rank as general. Because of his family's wealth, Pericles received an excellent education. He studied music and philosophy, and was influenced by great thinkers like Protagoras, Zeno, and especially Anaxagoras. From Anaxagoras, he learned calmness, logical thinking, and self-control, qualities that made him one of the most respected and thoughtful leaders in Greek history. In 472 BC, Pericles showed his wealth and status by sponsoring the play The Persians by Aeschylus at the Greater Dionysia Festival. Some historians believe he chose this play to honor the victory of Themistocles at Salamis and to show support for him against his rival Cimon. Plutarch later wrote that Pericles was the leading figure in Athens for about 40 years. This means he must have become a major political leader in his early 30s. During this time, he lived simply, avoided public banquets, and tried to set an example of discipline and modesty for the citizens. In 463 BC, Pericles led the prosecution against Cimon, the leader of the conservative party, accusing him of neglecting Athenian interests in Macedon. Although Cimon was found not guilty, the event showed that he was politically vulnerable. 2 years later, around 461 BC, the Democratic Party under Pericles and his mentor Ephialtes moved to limit the power of the Areopagus, a council dominated by the old aristocracy. This reform began what was later called radical democracy, giving more authority to ordinary citizens. Pericles supported these reforms and adopted policies that appealed to the public. Aristotle later wrote that he did this because his rich rival Cimon gained popularity by giving away his own money to the people. However, other historians believe Pericles could have built influence on his own if he wanted to. In 461 BC, Pericles used the process of ostracism to remove Cimon from power, accusing him of betraying Athens by helping Sparta. After Cimon's exile, Pericles continued with social reforms that helped the poor. He introduced a rule allowing citizens without money to attend theater performances for free, with the state paying their ticket. He also reduced the property requirement for holding public office and began paying citizens who served as jurors. One of his most controversial laws, passed in 451 BC, restricted Athenian citizenship to those whose parents were both Athenians. Critics said these changes weakened democracy, but Pericles believed they made the political system fairer by involving more people. He thought empowering ordinary citizens would make Athens stronger, especially since the navy, the foundation of Athenian power, was manned by the lower classes. After Ephialtes was murdered, Pericles became the uncontested leader of Athens. He held power until his death in 429 BC. His leadership saw both military action and political reform. During the First Peloponnesian War, he led campaigns in Sicyon and Acarnania, though not all were successful. Later, he and Cimon agreed on a temporary peace with Sparta. This marked a change in Pericles' strategy, showing that he could act pragmatically when needed. Athens also became involved in campaigns in Egypt and Cyprus, trying to weaken Persia's power. Both campaigns were difficult, and the Egyptian expedition ended in disaster. The Cypriot campaign, led by Cimon, achieved victory, but he died during it. Pericles may have organized these missions, aiming to expand Athens's influence. Around 449 BC, he called for a congress of Greek states to discuss rebuilding temples destroyed by the Persians. The meeting failed because Sparta refused to participate, but Pericles' goal may have been to strengthen Athenian leadership among the Greeks. Pericles continued to lead successful military operations. He helped Phocis regain control of the Delphi oracle, and later led an expedition to the Thracian peninsula to establish Athenian colonies. However, Athens faced several revolts during his rule. After losing a battle at Coronea, Pericles had to give up control of Boeotia. Later, when Euboea and Megara revolted, Sparta invaded Attica. Pericles managed to stop them through negotiation and possibly bribery, preventing further destruction. When the threat ended, he returned to Euboea and defeated the rebels, replacing some populations with Athenian settlers. The crisis ended with the 30 Years' Peace, signed around 445 BC. Athens agreed to give up many of its mainland territories, while both Athens and Sparta promised not to interfere with each other's allies. This peace allowed Athens to focus on its empire and cultural growth, marking the height of Pericles' leadership. The causes of the Peloponnesian War have long been debated. Many ancient writers blamed Pericles and Athens for starting it. Plutarch believed that Pericles pushed for war out of pride and ambition. Thucydides, however, wrote that the true reason was Sparta's fear of Athens's growing power. As Thucydides admired Pericles, some think his account favored Athens over Sparta. Pericles believed that a war with Sparta was unavoidable. He thought Sparta could not accept Athens's influence in Greece. When a conflict broke out between Corcyra and Corinth, Pericles sent Athenian ships to support Corcyra. The resulting naval battles angered Corinth and its allies. Soon after, Pericles introduced the Megarian decree, which banned Megarian merchants from Athenian markets and ports. This act severely damaged Megara's economy and angered Sparta, which supported Megara. Sparta demanded that Athens cancel the decree and expel Pericles' family, threatening war if Athens refused. Pericles advised the Athenians to stay firm and not give in to pressure. He argued that giving up now would only invite more Spartan demands. Instead, he offered to lift the decree only if Sparta agreed to stop expelling foreigners from its land and to give independence to its allies. Sparta rejected these terms, and both sides prepared for war. In 431 BC, Sparta sent envoys to Athens demanding that the Athenians yield. Pericles had already passed a law refusing to receive Spartan delegations if they acted aggressively. When Sparta gathered its army at Corinth, the Athenians refused to meet them, claiming this was a hostile act. Sparta then invaded Attica, but the countryside was empty. Following Pericles' plan, the entire population had moved inside Athens' city walls for safety. This was a hard decision, as many citizens had to abandon their farms and homes, but Pericles convinced them it was necessary. He promised that if the Spartans spared his estate, he would give it to the city, so no one could accuse him of secret ties with the enemy. As the Spartans burned Athenian farmland, anger grew among the citizens. Many blamed Pericles for bringing war upon them. Still, he refused to fight the Spartan army directly, knowing it would be too risky. Instead, he sent a fleet to raid the coasts of the Peloponnese, while Athenian cavalry protected farms near the city. When the Spartans withdrew, Pericles proposed saving money and ships for future emergencies, making it a capital crime to use these resources for any other purpose. That winter, he delivered his famous funeral oration, honoring the Athenians who died defending their city. In 430 BC, Sparta invaded Attica again, but Pericles kept to his strategy and led another naval expedition. Around the same time, a deadly plague struck Athens, killing thousands of people. The disease spread quickly through the crowded city and caused panic. Public anger turned against Pericles, and he was accused of mismanaging the war. In a passionate speech, he defended his policies and reminded the people of his lifelong service to Athens. He temporarily regained their trust, but political opponents fined him and removed him from command. Despite this, the Athenians soon realized how valuable he was. In 429 BC, they forgave him and re-elected him as general. He returned to leadership, but tragedy struck his household. Both of his sons, Pericles and Xanthippus, died from the plague. Heartbroken, Pericles himself fell ill and died the same year. Before his death, his friends praised his military victories, but he reminded them that his greatest achievement was that no Athenian ever wore mourning because of me. Thucydides later wrote that Pericles' death was a great loss for Athens, as those who came after him were weaker and cared more for popularity than wisdom. Pericles' tomb was later seen near the academy by the traveler Pausanias. In his personal life, Pericles first married a close relative and had two sons, Pericles and Xanthippus. He later divorced her with the agreement of her family. Afterward, he lived with Aspasia of Miletus, a woman admired for her intelligence and charm. They had a son together, Pericles the Younger. Their relationship caused scandal because Aspasia was not an Athenian citizen, but Pericles openly defended her. During the plague, his sister and both his legitimate sons died. Shortly before his own death, the Athenians changed the citizenship law he had once passed, allowing his half-Athenian son with Aspasia to become a citizen and inherit his name. Pericles shaped an entire era of Greek history, and opinions about him have always been divided. He was a strong leader, a skilled general, and a brilliant speaker. These qualities made him one of the most influential figures of Athens, but they also make it difficult to judge his actions objectively. Many historians have described Pericles as both a populist and a great statesman. Some believed he used his charm to control the people, while others admired his wisdom and honesty. Plutarch wrote that once Pericles became the leader of Athens, he changed. He was no longer simply following the people's wishes, but guiding them with confidence. Even his rivals admitted his power. Thucydides, his political opponent, once said that Pericles could make people believe he had won a debate even when he had lost. Ancient writers praised him for being free from corruption, though he was practical about wealth and money. The historian Thucydides admired Pericles deeply, calling Athens a democracy in name, but in fact led by its first citizen. He saw Pericles as a man who led rather than followed, convincing people through reason. Other thinkers, such as Plato, criticized him, saying that he made the Athenians lazy and greedy by giving them money for public service and festivals. Some later scholars suggested that Pericles may not have ruled alone, but relied on advisors and public opinion to shape his policies. Still, he clearly had the trust and respect of the people throughout his career. As a military leader, Pericles led many naval campaigns over more than 20 years. He was cautious and avoided risky battles, believing Athens's power depended on its navy. He strengthened the city's defenses and rebuilt its walls, making Athens much harder to attack. During the Peloponnesian War, he followed a defensive strategy designed to wear down Sparta rather than defeat it outright. He avoided expanding the empire too far and focused on protecting what Athens already controlled. Many later historians saw this as a wise and realistic policy. Some even said that if Pericles had lived longer, Athens might have won the war. Others, however, argued that his strategy was too cautious and failed to bring victory. Critics like Donald Kagan and Victor Davis Hanson said his plan depended too much on time and public patience, which eventually ran out after his death. Pericles was also one of the greatest speakers of his age. None of his speeches survive in his own words, but the historian Thucydides recorded several of them, including the famous funeral oration. Historians still debate how much of those speeches came from Pericles himself and how much was Thucydides' own interpretation. Even so, ancient and modern writers agree that Pericles' speeches were powerful, dignified, and filled with idealism. He spoke calmly and clearly, without theatrics, though some said his tone could sound proud or distant. Ancient Greeks even called him Olympian, comparing his voice and presence to that of Zeus, the king of the gods. Religion and politics were closely linked in Athens, and Pericles played an important role in both. As a statesman and general, he sponsored great religious and cultural projects such as the temples on the Acropolis, which honored Athena and other gods. These works also symbolized Athens's glory and unity. Some people saw Pericles as a favorite of Athena, while others mocked him by comparing him to Zeus because of his power and authority. A few philosophers thought he was too rational or skeptical about religion, especially because several of his friends were accused of impiety. These tensions showed how difficult it was for free thinkers to express themselves in Athens, even during its golden age. Pericles' greatest legacy lies in the art, architecture, and culture he helped create. The Parthenon and the other buildings of the Acropolis remain among the most important monuments of Western civilization. His age produced advances in philosophy, drama, sculpture, and democracy that continue to inspire the world today. Yet, in politics, some historians argue that his policies also encouraged Athenian imperialism, the domination of other Greek states by Athens. This power, though glorious at first, later helped cause the city's downfall. Even so, Pericles' vision of Athens as a center of beauty, freedom, and intellect ensured that his name would be remembered forever.